Hello and welcome. This is a video on HIV/AIDS and mobility by the Communicable Disease Unit at the South African Ministry of Health. This video aims to understand HIV/AIDS and mobility within the context of South Africa, as well as discuss public health strategies in order to reduce the negative impacts on the Firstly, what is mobility? Mobility is defined as movement of people from one place to another, temporarily, permanently, or seasonally. The leading causes of mobility worldwide is war, natural disasters, jobs, education and tourism. The number of international migrants was estimated at 232 million in 2013 alone. The number is expected to nearly double to 405 million by 2050. That's less than 15 years away. Within South Africa itself, there's been a strong movement of people internally towards urban settings in the last decade, though 37% of the country still lives rurally. Those who do move are mostly young males between the ages of 24 and 34. The main reason being employment, education, seek social services such as healthcare. One of the key drivers of movement within South Africa and abroad is employment. South Africa suffers from the 8th highest unemployment rate in the world. An estimated 5.6 million, 26% of the population unemployed in 2015. Worryingly, unemployment has steadily been increasing on average over the past 7 years. Hence, many people travel within South Africa and internationally to find jobs such as those in the mining industry, manufacturing and service industries. Unfortunately, accurate data is still difficult to collect due to a limited government infrastructure and resources, higher literacy and poverty, particularly among females, and a large rural population. Now let's look to HIV/AIDS. Firstly, what is HIV/AIDS? HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, is an infectious disease which is primarily transmitted via unprotected sexual intercourse, the sharing of needles, and between mother and child. It is important to note it is not transmissible via air, water, insects, saliva, or casual contact, such as handshakes. If left untreated, HIV progresses to AIDS, or acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and eventually death. There is currently no cure. HIV/AIDS is a global pandemic and the 6th leading cause of death worldwide, of which 95% of cases are in developing countries, with an estimated 36.9 million people living with HIV and approximately 2 million people newly infected within the year 2014 alone. Unfortunately, an estimated 1.2 million people died of AIDS in 2014, 20% of which were just children. These scary figures demonstrate the number of people living with HIV/AIDS is still growing, an alarming rate of approximately 800,000 per annum. Sub-Saharan Africa has the largest number of people living with HIV/AIDS in the world, with a shocking 71% of all cases, where there is higher rates of poverty and limited education, health infrastructure and resources. Within South Africa itself, there is 6.3 million people living with HIV/AIDS, which is approximately 19% of the population. An estimated 340,000 were newly infected, and unfortunately 200,000 people died of AIDS-related sicknesses in 2014 alone. But it's not all bad news. The use of ARTs, antiretroviral therapies, have been dramatically increased over the previous decade. In 2014, only 4% of the HIV population received treatment for ARTs. In 2006, it was 21%, and in 2013, it was even better at 42%. That's an improvement of over 1,000% in just 9 years. ARTs allow people suffering with HIV to live a mostly normal life, with sexual partners and children with very low transmission rates, often less than 1%, as well as dramatically increased lifespan. In conjunction, ARTs have decreased from costing $10,000 per annum in 2000 to costing approximately $100 in 2015. This is great news for both the sufferers of HIV and for reducing rates of transmission into the future. As discussed earlier, we see a strong correlation between high rates of HIV and mobility. And a key example is South Africa's truck drivers, who are almost 3 times more likely to have HIV at 56% compared to the rest of the population at 19%. Due to their highly mobile careers, truck drivers have reduced access to healthcare facilities and increased risk of conditions that lead to unsafe sex. It is also strongly correlated with having more sexual partners, a central transmission mode of HIV. One study revealed 33% of truck drivers on long-distance journeys reported stopping for sexual intercourse. This is coupled with high rates of HIV amongst truck drivers. It is very worrying. It's very worrying, especially when one reflects upon the aforementioned idea that international mobility is expected to double within the next 15 years. The following diagram demonstrates the interplay of HIV/AIDS and mobility, particularly within sub-Saharan Africa. You can see South Africa has the 4th highest HIV prevalence for 15 to 49-year-olds, with Swaziland and Lesotho first and third on the list geographically exist within the borders of South Africa itself. In fact, South Africa's neighbours with the top 5 countries with the highest HIV prevalence in the world, and the 9th highest per capita countries share a border. This is a killer fact in our opinion and clearly demonstrates a link between HIV and mobility within this area. It is really important to us to remember this, so please do. Moving on, this is a diagram we constructed in order to provide a visual demonstration of the complexity when understanding HIV/AIDS and mobility within South Africa. We hope you may start to realise how interconnected and dependent all these issues are. This realisation is highly important when dealing with an epidemic of this magnitude and complexity. For example, we can see how discrimination, education, unemployment, culture, and health infrastructure are all connected and all play a role in both the problem and the solution. Too often we think of improving health as a singular problem, by which I mean an issue purely the responsibility of medical doctors. But this is not the case. All sectors play a role in improving health, from education to unemployment to social inequality. Now, after viewing all the information surrounding HIV/AIDS in South Africa, we now want to draw your awareness towards how we can implement effective positive change. We here at the Ministry of Health suggest a multifaceted approach in order to protect and empower our people. But firstly, we recognise the shortcomings of our old approach, the ABC approach: abstinence, be faithful, and use a condom. Though, true in fact, it has not been highly effective when implemented alone. That is why we now suggest a holistic public approach, which includes behaviour, biomedical, and structural strategies implemented together. Firstly, we suggest implementing behavioural strategies, which include provision of sexual education, such as correct condom use for both females and males, as well as education problems to help reduce stigma and discrimination surrounding HIV. Secondly, from a biomedical perspective, we want to increase access to ARTs to 100%, or our HIV-infected population to 100% of our HIV-infected population within 5 years, up from 42% in 2013, as well as provide 50% more syringes and more testing facilities, particularly to high-risk areas, as well as clean needles and syringes. Thirdly, we want to implement structural reform by reducing social, economic, and gender inequality, and decriminalising sex workers and enforcing LBGT rights. It is only by tackling this issue from a holistic perspective to believe we can bring about significant change. In turn, we will be informing and instructing our neighbouring countries in order to bring them along on this journey to a HIV-free Africa. Lastly, there has been significant improvements in the treatment and prevention of HIV/AIDS, but this issue is far from being under control, and we must adapt our methods to our changing world. I want to leave you with these 3 points. The future is bright. HIV can and will be eradicated from South Africa, but we need your help. The time to act is now. This report was produced by the South African Ministry of Health.